Okay, for this problem, the question is asking us to find the amplitude, the period, the horizontal shift, and the midline of the given equation. And this one is a cosine version. Then we have to set up a table of 5 key points and sketch a graph for it, right? So before we even get to what the question asks us to do, first thing first, we have to make sure that there's nothing standing directly in front of x. If it was the case, then we have to factor it out from whatever we have from the parentheses. So let's do it first. I'm going to copy and paste out what I have for the original functions out here. And then we're going to work with the inside the parentheses in a second. Okay, so let me make space for it. This step is just copy and paste out whatever I have from the original question, okay? So now I only want x to stand by itself, so I'm going to factor 2 pi from everything inside of the parentheses. Okay, for the first term, if I factor out 2 pi, I'm going to get x left over. And moving on to the plus in between. And then for the pi over 3, if I factor out 2 pi from pi over 3, what do I have left? There's a lot of ways to think about this one. If you're good at math, you can do pi over 3 divided by 2 pi. If you don't want to do it by hand, you have the options of putting it into the calculator. You can do pi over 3 in parentheses divided by 2 pi in the parentheses. And if your calculator doesn't take the input of pi's, you can also do 1 over 3 in parentheses divided by 2. And hopefully we end up having the same answer as 1 over 6 in here. Okay? So these are, the syntax of what you're going to put into the calculator to get the spot of 1 over 6. Okay? And after that, now let's get to what the question wants. So they want the amplitude. In here, if you read the formula, if you remember the general formula of it, it goes F, or actually in class we did y equals A for amplitude, and then cosine or sine, depending on like the version that the problem gives you. And then open parentheses, we have B, and in here I have x plus h, close, and then plus k. Notice that besides the cosine, sine, the x in here, the 4 letters that we have in here, they all go according to the alphabetical order from left to right. So we go A, B, H, K, alphabetical order, okay? So A in here representing the amplitude. The B in here, we do have the formula to go from B to period, and we're going to talk about it in a second. H in here, it will representing the horizontal shift. And a K in here, it will represent the vertical shift or the midline equation. Okay? So the work in here, right? Let's go with, I guess, green. The amplitude in here, just, copy and paste by the same position. We know that the amplitude, A, equals to a half. Amplitude, A equals to a half, or 0.5. Either way you want to read it, okay? And then next up, we have the period. The period. We do have the formula for the period. It equals to 2 pi divided by B, right? So period, it is 2 pi divided by B. Let's do it, right? So we have 2 pi divided by, what is B in here? B is this, 2 pi. So 2 pi divided by 2 pi, we're going to get 1. Our period in here would be 1. And then next up, in pink, we have horizontal shift. HS for horizontal shift. We know that equals to H. The spot in here is a positive 1 over 6. And if you remember it, for horizontal direction, we have to go opposite to our intuition. So if we have a positive number, it means we go to the left. And if we have a negative number, it means we go to the right. Okay? And then last thing last, we have a, let's do sine, midline. Midline equation, ML for midline equation. Okay, what is my midline equation? Midline equation is the k value. The k value in here equals to a -3. So that means that the midline equation, it would be y equals -3. The highlight in here, it would be the y value, okay? Midline equation is not just a value. If you just put -3, that's wrong. Midline, I'm talking about a line, and a line, it needs a variable. So you need to go either x equal to -3 or y equal to -3. And because the midline here is a horizontal line, then I need you to put y equals to -3. Make sure you include the y in here. Don't forget the y, okay? And after this, well, we have to set up the tables of 5 key points and then sketch a graph. I'm going to teach you guys how to sketch your graph first, and then from there, we're going to set up the 5 key points from the graph, okay, to make it easier, okay? So I want you to think about the period first. This would be step 1, period. Since we always going to have 5 key points, right, we know that we must have 5 points. So on the number line, I want you to make space for 5 points. Starting from 0, always, for sine cosine, we're always going to start from 0. And the ending point here would be the period. The period is 1, so we end the last point here, the ending point would be 1. And then make space for 5 points, right? So if we have like 5 points in here, use your logic to fill in the values of the x values in here, okay? Between 0 and 1, it would be 0.5. Between 0 and 0.5, it would be 0.25. And between 0.5 and 1, we would get 0.75. Okay, this is just pure logic, okay? And then after that, I want you to sketch a graph. Okay, so let me go back to the XY coordinate. So this is my Y values, or my Y axis. This is my X axis, Y and X. And now I want you to sketch the midline after that. So I want you to sketch the midline. The midline is at the level of y equals to -3. Let me calculate, make some tick marks for this. So the midline at y equals to -3, it would be right here. And I'm going to draw it in dash, okay? Midline, I want you to do it in dash because it's not the function. So I want you to do it in dash line. Midline, y equals to -3. And make sure you label as you go on the graph, okay? And we're going to get 5 points from step 1 for the period. So let's bring those 5 points into our graph. So 5 points. Make sure you label them. The first one is 0. Next one we have 0 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. And this is 1. And I just figured I have 1 tick mark and extra. Let me get rid of that. Okay? 5 points in, we have the midline. And now step 3, I want you to go with the amplitude. Amplitude, so from the midline, we're going to go half up, half down. So this is calculate the bottom line, or like the range that you're going to, go in between. And you will see what I mean in a second. And now, going back to the original problem, since the problem is giving us cosine version. Okay? So this is something I want you guys to keep in mind, and I'm going to put it in purple, okay? Let me go over here. If you have a sine pattern, then just imagine if this is your midline, right? The sine, it will start off from the origin, and it's going to go up, back to the midline, down, and back to the midline. These are the 5-point patterns for sine, okay? If we onto the cosine pattern, we're going to have a midline, right? But we're not going to start from the midline. We're going to start above the midline. We start in here, back to the midline, go below it, back up to the midline, and then to the max, like this. So this problem is asking for cosine, so we have to go with this version in here, okay? So we just kind of follow the 5-point calculate pattern here to piece everything together, right? I go to the max first. So from the midline, I go up by 0.5 because that's my amplitude, right? My amplitude is 0.5, so I'm not going to go up a whole unit. I'm going to go up only by 0.5. So I'm going to start it here, okay? And next up, I'm going to go to the midline. So 0.25, that's my second point. I'm going to go to the midline. Go down by 0.5 from the midline. And back up to the midline. And I go max for the last point. Make sure you keep your points within the amplitude, okay? Because if you get out of the amplitude, you're out. You're wrong, okay? So let me get rid of this. And we almost done with the problem. The last step in here is the phase shift, right? Or the horizontal shift. Either name that you want to call. This is step 4. What we're going to do after this is that we're going to move everything. We're going to move all the 5 points to the left by 1.6. I mean 1 over 6. Okay. And if you want to get a better graph, if you want to be more accurate about what you're drawing, right? 1 over 6, if you put it in the calculator, you're going to get 0.1. Okay, let me do it out. 0.167 or 667. And you can take how many decimals depending on like how you want to. Okay. So on the grid in here, 0.16 is a little bit like halfway between 0 and 0.25, right? So I'm gonna move everything half a tick mark to the left. Okay, so I'm gonna do it in pink. So this point, the tick mark, just imagine if it's like right here. Then my point from purple, I'm gonna go to the left by half of the tick mark. So it's gonna be approximately over here. This one is going to be over here, over here, over here, and over here. Okay? And now we're going to connect everything together. And after that, I want you guys to help me label every point. And that would be it. Okay? So to label it out, the X part is a little bit complicated, but the Y part is easy, right? So let's get all the Y value first. We have 5 points, so let me make space for 5 points. 5 points, right? The Y values are on the pink point in here. For the first one is half up from the midline, so half above -3, I get -2.5, or -5 over 2 if you want to put it as a fraction. Second point, because it's on the midline, so the Y value, it would be -3. Third point is is a half below -3, so I would get -3.5 or -7 over 2 if you want to make it a fraction. Fourth point is on the midline, so the Y value, it would be -3. Last point is above the midline by half, so it's going to be -5 over 2. Okay? The rest of the X value, I want you to use the calculation and do from the yellow X values in here, you minus 1/6 from it. So 0 minus 1/6, I'm going to get -1 over 6 for the first point. Second point, I would do 0.25 minus 1 over 6 on a calculator. And make sure you get a fraction version of this one, because if you choose to get a decimal version, it's going to be a little bit complicated to write it or to route it in general, okay? So the second point, I would do 1 over 12. And how do I get it? I would do 0.25 minus 1/6. This is the work, okay? And let me just like draw the work for this one, or write the work for this one too, just in case you guys wonder where I have that point. And next up, I'm gonna get this point, the third point, right? The third point, I want the third point, which is 0.5, right? So how do I get the X value from it? Well, I'm gonna do 0.5 minus 1 over 6. As usual, this is the work, right? And then I'm gonna put in the calculator, and I'm gonna get 1 over 3. Moving on to the fourth point, right? So moving on to the fourth point right here. Wait. This one, I'm going to do the same thing. So 0.75 minus 1 over 6 as the work. And as for the result, I'm going to get 7 over 12 for my X value. Last point, right? I'm focusing on the 1 in here. Right, I'm gonna be doing the same thing, right? So I'm gonna do 1 minus 1 over 6 as the work, and then in the calculator it's gonna give me 5 over 6. Okay, let me get rid of this one first, and then I'm gonna put 5 over 6 in here to fulfill the last point I'm having. Okay, and what I want you to do, for the sake of the table of 5 points, that I want you to lay them down as a table version, okay? So X, Y, I need you to put all the points from left to right. The first point is negative 1 over 6. Let me just put it as a fraction to make it, more beautiful, I guess. The y value of it would be negative 5 over 2. Second point is 1 over 12 and negative 3. Third point is 1 over 3 and negative 7 over 2. Fourth point is 5 over 6, negative 5 over 2. Just copy and paste. Wait, actually, that's my last point. So here, that will be good enough for the space. And then my fourth point, it would be 7 over 12 and negative 3. So this is it, okay? This is the complete solution to this problem.